Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Andersson, and currently I'm a trainee at the Directorate for Human Resources at the European Court of Auditors, working mainly with diversity and inclusion. And I recently completed my master's in welfare policies and management at Lund University, where I also earned my bachelor's in development studies, both with a major in sociology. And today I am proud to share insights from my master's thesis, which focuses on the role of caseworkers in the Swedish asylum system, specifically in cases involving SOGIESK. So in today's presentation, I will walk you through the core aspects of my research. I'll start by outlining the Swedish asylum system structure and its implications for SOGIESK cases. Then I'll discuss the research methods and the theoretical underpinnings that I employed, as well as previous literature. And then we'll delve into the key findings of my study, followed by an exploration of potential policy recommendations to improve the system. So Sweden has long been recognized for its commitment to providing asylum and protection to those in need. However, in recent years, similarly to other European countries, there has been a paradigm shift towards more restrictive immigration policies, and this was exemplified by the 2022 TIDA agreement, which, for example, has cut assessment hours in effort to reduce immigration. Swedish authorities and civil servants have a reputation for being neutral, but they're also responsible for carrying out the government's inherently political policies. And caseworkers at the Swedish Migration Agency are central to this process. They are responsible for conducting interviews, evaluating evidence, and making recommendations to decision makers on asylum claims. Specifically in SOGIESK cases, caseworkers have to assess not only the credibility of the asylum seeker's narrative, but also understand and interpret diverse expressions of gender and sexuality, and often within a very tight time constraint and under bureaucratic pressure. And although asylum seekers have the right to appeal negative decisions, the success rate remains very low, as Einum Gröndahl's analysis have showcased. Between 2020 and 2023, 96% of the roughly 1,300 cases that they studied were rejected, highlighting systematic challenges and potential biases within the assessment. So my research adopted a qualitative approach to explore the experiences and perceptions of SMA caseworkers handling SOGIESK asylum cases. So in February this year, I conducted 7 interviews with caseworkers. Each interview, which lasted about 1 hour, was designed to encourage open and honest dialogue about their roles, challenges that they face, and perceptions of the system. I then analyzed the data using an approach that allowed themes and patterns to emerge organically from the participants' narratives. And as of theory, the theoretical framework of my study drew on queer theory and social constructivism, using concepts from mainly scholars such as Michel Foucault and Judith Butler. And these theories helped me to unpack the power dynamics between the state, the caseworker, and the refugee. One of the key concepts I used is bureaucratic violence, which refers to how state agencies exert control, and not through direct physical force, but by denying individuals fundamental rights, such as the right to safety and to movement. And in SOGIESK cases, this bureaucratic violence can manifest through misinterpretation or dismissal of an asylum seeker's identity. And Butler's theory of performativity examines how gender and sexual identities are not innate, but are continuously constructed and expressed through repeated actions and societal norms. And this framework allowed me to analyze how caseworkers might impose certain expectations on asylum seekers, leading to invalidation of their subjective experiences. And I've especially emphasized personal and subjective experiences as Saji-esque refugees navigate a spectrum of gender and sexual identities that cannot be essentialized or reduced to a binary understanding, because there is no singular one authentic experience of being a Saji-esque refugee, only individual experiences. And the existing research indicates that asylum systems often operate on essentialist and Western-centric understandings of gender and sexuality, which leads to very narrow expectations, of course, of how a genuine Saji-esque person should, or asylum seeker should be expressed, and specifically in this case, how their narrative should be narrated, how their story is supposed to be unfolding. And the concept of the requirement of shame also emerged in the literature, where asylum seekers are expected to demonstrate feelings of shame, guilt, and trauma related to their identities to be considered credible. And lastly, studies point to the impact of institutional biases and the lack of adequate training and the resources for caseworkers, which again contribute to inconsistent and often unjust outcomes. And this highlights the need to understand the processes from the inside and how caseworkers interpret the assessment and their role in it. So one of the largest themes that emerged from my interviews was the tendency among caseworkers to almost without realizing it, essentialize and simplify Saji-esque identities during the assessment. Many caseworkers admitted to holding expectations about how a genuine Saji-esque asylum seeker should articulate their identity, and most often to have a deep and emotional story of self-realization. During the asylum interviews, caseworkers often expect them to narrate their experiences through a lens of suffering, guilt, and shame, as previous literature suggested. And if an individual does not, their story is sometimes perceived as less credible. For example, one caseworker that I interviewed, Linnea, pointed out that decision makers in her unit often assume that asylum seekers from more conservative cultures should feel significant shame about their Saji-esque identity. She said that, quote, there's no room for someone to have a positive experience of their identity, unquote. And this assumption reflects a deeply rooted essentialism that limits the understanding of queerness to negative emotions. And similarly, some caseworkers believe that understanding one's Saji-esque identity should involve having romantic relationships. As one caseworker put it, most of the time you have had at least one partner. That is how you understand that you are gay or lesbian. And this expectation creates barriers for individuals who have not had these experiences, which further reinforces this narrow and very linear view of who is queer and not. By expecting asylum seekers to conform to these narratives, caseworkers are, in a sense, gatekeepers of this knowledge. Butler's concept of performativity is also relevant here, as these expectations enforce a performative expression of identity that may not reflect the asylum seeker's personal experiences. These experiences or these expectations not only place a heavy burden on asylum seekers to conform, but also risks invalidating those that do not fit these preconceived notions. The second theme involves how caseworkers perceive their role within the asylum process. Some caseworkers see their job as strictly assessing the credibility of the asylum seeker's narrative, while others see themselves as interrogating the individual's identity. And this divide I think, underscore the ethical and emotional dilemmas that they have to navigate in their job. For example, one caseworker, Jimmy, straightforwardly said to me that some people lie. It happens quite often. And this suggests that skepticism is ingrained in the assessment, with caseworkers tasked with identifying potential dishonesty. And on the other hand, Camilla expressed a contrasting view, stating, "We never say whether someone is lying or not, but simply if they're making their narrative credible or not." Furthermore, several caseworkers expressed discomfort with the power that they hold. Linnea reflected on the emotional toll of her job by saying, "It gnawed at me. Who am I to decide who stays and who goes?" And I think this internal struggle often leads the caseworker to emotional detachment. To cope, caseworkers sometimes use mantras to separate their personal values from their professional duties. One caseworker mentioned that, quote, "It's not me who thinks this way, it's the government's rules," unquote, which illustrates how they distance themselves from the moral weight of their decisions that they have to make. And these insights underscore the balancing act that caseworkers perform between fulfilling bureaucratic demands, adhering to legal frameworks, and honoring the human dignity of asylum seekers. The final theme focused on the internal criticism that caseworkers have about the process. Many expressed frustration with the unclarity of guidelines that they follow and lack of proper training on LGBTQI issues, which left them feeling unprepared, basically, to handle sensitive asylum cases. For instance, Lotta pointed out that while decision makers receive training on LGBTQI issues, caseworkers, the ones that who conduct the actual interview, often do not. And as a result, caseworkers may focus too heavily on closed questions rather than encouraging the asylum seekers to share their story openly. And I thought that the notion of bureaucratic violence is particularly relevant in this scenario here. The structural inefficiencies, such as lack of training and the pressure to meet efficiency targets, can result in assessments that, in a sense, dehumanize asylum seekers. Another caseworker, Sara, emphasized how these pressures lead to rushed interviews, which further marginalize these individuals. Marcus raised concerns about inherent biases, noting that some of his colleagues were skeptical of asylum seekers from countries such as Morocco, assuming that all Moroccan street children suddenly claim to be gay. And this emphasizes the need for intersectionality in the training and the whole evaluation process. Marcus suggested, for example, also that richer country information about LGBTQI experiences could provide a more thorough framework to work within. And this goes together with the fact that it appears that the training of caseworkers is not sufficient when it comes to specific LGBTQI knowledge in the previous literature. And some of the caseworkers argued, however, that there is no way to improve the process other than to change guidelines and the law, basically, to make it more generous, humane, and inclusive of diverse cultures and identities. So, in conclusion, my research reveals some of the challenges within the Swedish asylum system handling such as cases. Essentialist views combined with the pressure of bureaucratic efficiency creates an environment where asylum seekers are judged based on their ability to conform to narrow expectations of what it means to be queer. And to improve the fairness and accuracy of these assessments, it is essential to provide better training for caseworkers and to adopt a more intersectional approach that recognizes the diversity of SOGIESC experiences. Future policymakers should also explore moving away from identity-based assessments towards focusing more on the risk of persecution. Because without more intersectional and cultural understanding of queer realities at migration agencies that goes beyond the West and hetero and cis normativity, it is impossible to ensure that SOGI-esque asylum processes are handled fair and equitable, not only in Sweden, but also on a global level. Thank you.